Hello, my name is Dorinka, and I am a very passionate student of Vedic astrology. And I'm starting a series on the signs, just an introduction into the 12 zodiac signs and what they represent. And this is applicable if you are interested in whatever kind of astrology. We all live under the same sky, and there are many ways to interpret the images. A lot of people dismiss astrology. They say, prehistoric men just attributed random symbols and shapes to the sky to make sense of the harshness of the realities of life. And this is simply not the case. There's a vast mathematical science, based on profound wisdom and knowledge that is being passed down originally orally from student to disciple, student to disciple. And so we actually don't really know the original time frame of when astrology came to be, but it is definitely in the thousands and thousands of years ago. However, this series is not alluding or sort of going into the history of astrology. I just want to talk more about the zodiac signs, and really the more that you understand them, the more you can really understand your own psychology, because that's what they reflect. Now, the human body, the human psychology, the mind is a reflection of the greater cosmos. We are a microcosm living in the macrocosm. There's a divine interrelationship between all living things, inanimate and animate things, things that appear to be living, things that appear to be non-living. There's this profound relationship that exists, and we are under the influence, whether we like it or not. And one of the main purposes of astrology is to allow us to become aware of our own faults and patterns so that we can evolve and we can grow. A lot of people I hear say, "Oh, I'm not a spiritual person," but when you think about atomic energy, when you get right down into the atom, everything is energy. So even science is saying the same things that all spiritual traditions say. It all comes back down to energy. And the more that we put our awareness in that direction, the more sensitive we become, the more open we become to the subtle dimensions of life, the more control we are able to weave in our lives and not be so controlled by the hands of fate. We start to realize our own co-creative process in the greater scheme of things, and understanding our own unique universe and how our universe interacts with 7 billion people on the planet. So the first zodiac sign is the sign of Aries, and Aries is known as the ram. Color is red, and it is ruled by the planet Mars. Now it's essential to understand the planet that rules the sign. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm an Aries and this is just some basic characteristics," and then just whitewash it like that. There's so much more to understanding how a sign functions based on the mythology, based on the planet that it represents, that rules it, and where that planet is and how it expresses itself and so on. So when you start to study astrology, you get to see these patterns, you see these truisms that are manifesting in your life. So let's come back down to Aries. So Aries, ruled by the planet Mars. Mars is a hot, red, dry, fiery, very pitta planet. It's a very hot planet. It can be quite aggressive. And Aries has these qualities. Aries, the sun is in Aries from the middle of April until the middle of May. This is a sidereal calendar. I'm sorry, I don't follow the Western calendar. It is 1,500 years out of date. We've moved on from there. So sidereally, the sun is usually changes signs around the middle of each month. And Aries qualities, it can be very headstrong. Aries is the first sign. There's a newness. There's a exuberance with Aries. There's a sense of me first, get out of my way. I'm coming, I've got these ideas. It acts first and it thinks later. It can be very pioneering. It can be very courageous. It can be very brave. These are all qualities of Mars. Now, Mars rules both Aries and Scorpio. And so there are different qualities to how Mars expresses itself and relates to these signs. So sometimes you might identify with being an Aries or a Scorpio or whatever, but actually you may have a very strong Mars, and maybe Mars is sitting in your first house. So there's different ways that we feel this Martian energy. Aries people can be quite aggressive, but Aries is a cardinal fire. That means that it's always on the move. It's always following its inspiration. It's always, it doesn't always know how to stop. So there's this constant sense of movement with cardinal signs. And what I have noticed with Aries people, I myself have 2 planets in Aries, is that their anger can be quite sharp and fast and quite hot, but they flare up and they get over it quite quickly. It's not a brooding, seething kind of fire like you would find with Scorpio, which tends to hold on to the hurt for eternity. Aries does tend to get over things quite quickly, but there can be, it can be very egoistic because of its newness and its youth. So, Mars qualities give it this aspect. Now, if you want to understand Aries a little more, we want to look at its opposite sign. So how does Aries deal with relationships? So the opposite sign is Libra. Libra is about harmony, and it doesn't like conflict, and it likes there to be peace. Now, the first house ruler will be ruled by Mars, so the 7th house of partnership is ruled by Venus. So this is how we can understand particular relational patterns under certain ascendant signs. So generally, Mars-type people or Aries rising people will tend to attract Venus-type people. But Venus and Mars are a fire and a water planet, so they can be quite inimical to each other. They can, there can be fights, there can be a lot of passion, but that doesn't necessarily promote stability. Now, of course, you have to see where Venus and Mars are placed in the chart. Are they receiving difficult aspects? Are they in good places? Is there support from Jupiter? Etc., etc. So there's many factors that go into determining the quality of relationship, but you can see these basic themes repeated in these rising signs. So Aries will tend to go for a more diplomatic, a more peace-loving spouse. They may be quite dominating to their spouse, but generally there can be a lot of passion. There can be a lot of fieriness with Aries, and also their relationships may change a lot because Libra is also another cardinal sign. So there can be lots of movement in relationships. So you would want to keep things fresh and vibrant and alive. And that is one of the positive qualities of Aries, is that they can be quite childlike in their expression. They're always up for an adventure. They're always ready to have a good time. They're always ready to suggest some kind of activity to do. And so that's definitely one way you can keep your Aries interested, is give them attention, show them that you care, suggest some activities, let them take action, and you can find greater harmony in your relationship with your Aries. So Saturn is the most difficult planet for Aries because their natures, essentially Mars and Saturn, are completely opposite energies. You have Mars, which is very egoistic. It likes to take action. It asks questions later. It wants to keep moving forward. And when its movement is blocked, when its energy is blocking, you get a lot of frustration. And so what Saturn does, Saturn by nature delays, restricts, puts obstacles in our path. We experience that with people that are, more in authority over us, or when things aren't going our way, these natural blockages that happen in life. This goes against the nature of Aries, so they tend to get more frustrated. And so when Saturn is sitting in the first house for Aries, or, when Saturn's transiting Aries, and so on, or say, you're an Aries type person and you meet someone who's born with Saturn in Aries, you're going to feel that as a restrictive block. But the higher spiritual lesson of that is to sort of transform the lower egoic nature that says me first, which is inherently selfish. Saturn is a very democratic planet. Saturn actually exalts in the sign of Libra, the sign of partnership, because partnerships are all about sacrifice and compromise and serving your partner and, all of those kind of things. And that, in a way, that's kind of opposite to Aries, because Aries is thinking about me and what are you doing for me? And this isn't, it's not balanced because you're not thinking about me and me. So this is the toxic trait of Aries, and again, we can understand this by studying the nature of Mars. So these are some of the spiritual lessons that Aries people need to learn, and they tend to experience that through their relationships, and through all other people. We experience these themes, and so part of the balance with this is learning to temper the ego and to compromise and to sacrifice things, which can be very hard for Aries type people, at least initially, or when the energy is immature. When the energy starts to mature, then you have people that are able to sacrifice their ego for a higher cause. They're able to take their action and make it a devotional service. So this is where things like karma yoga can be very good for Aries type people, because remember, Aries is cardinal, so it needs to keep moving. It needs to be doing something. But if it can direct its energy from the lower chakras, which is sex, money, and power, into the higher chakras to do with wisdom and truth and the expression of the heart, then the more pure qualities of Mars can come out. And in the mythologies, Mangal or Mars was actually a celibate, and he was a divine warrior. So, this is the warrior that is protecting Dharma, which is righteousness and the universal laws of harmony. So these are some points to think about with Aries. There's a lot more that I could cover. And I'd love to know what you think. Are you an Aries? Do you have strong Aries placements in your chart? Do you know an Aries? Drop some comments below.